Governor-elect Evers and I met at 8 o'clock in my office right here, so hopefully we can kind of answer as many questions as you guys have. So I can start kind of with the Evers stuff if you want to. So it was good. We had I guess about 20-minute meeting. You know, I've known Tony for, I think, for many years, even before he was superintendent of DPI, because he was administrator up in Oakfield at one time, and then with CISA. So we've known each other for years, and then he would come in. It seemed like every budget, just talk a little bit about education items, same type of thing. We'd just sit down in my office and talk about things. So it was kind of similar. The meeting today was similar. It was personal, kind of back and forth about how things are going. And then we started to talk about a few issues, and then kind of said, let's, try and meet on a regular basis moving forward. So with that, I don't know if you have any questions specific to that, or.
Fitz, do you envision the Senate confirming the appointees he's announced so far?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that process. I think there was a little concern about one of the items that was aimed specifically at in the lame duck, advice and consent, what that was about, or why was that part of it. And I explained it really goes back directly to kind of the concerns that we had after ethics and elections, and the discussion in and around that there was kind of this area of concern right after those votes were taken as to, well, what if the Senate does bring up a nominee and shoots him down? What is the process kind of from that moment on, and how can they what capacity can they continue to serve in? How can they serve? Can they move in and out of civil service positions? And a lot of that was driven by Mike Haas and kind of where he's at now. So I said it wasn't aimed. It was not in any way aimed at Governor-elect Evers and his nominees. So we kind of explained that, and I think that was somewhat resolved.
So do you have any problem with any of those nominees?
No, we talked about Joel Brennan quite a bit because I know Joel. He and I are on the Center District together. We have been for the last 3 years. He's a great guy. I can't say that he and I have worked on anything directly together, but just a super guy to serve on a board with. Great personality, and we've kind of talked about a number of issues related to the new arena and the Center District. So I look forward to meeting with Joel. When I saw his name was announced, I said, that's a good pick. That's a good pick right now. So
the governor-elect, of course, is going to pick whoever he's going to pick, and that's his right to. But are you at all concerned with some of the advisory posts, many of the advisory posts, people who are advising the governor right now who come from very far left positions?
Yeah, I think I've said publicly. I mean, you can tell a lot about how things are going to move along depending on who you do kind of surround yourself with, and I don't want to comment, I guess, directly because a lot of it is kind of rumor mill stuff, but and some of it's coming from who's in some of the meetings right now and who's advising. So we'll wait to see if the governor-elect makes any formal moves with some of these people, but. Yeah, I've said it before, and it's just going to be a different type of budget that I think will be introduced in hopefully mid-February, late February at the latest. And it's going to take Wisconsin in a different direction, and I think that's what a lot of the Republican legislators are concerned about.
What do you think about the governor's pick to lead DNR, Preston Cole?
I don't know him at all. Like I said, I know Joel Brennan. I did not know anyone else that's been named so far, so look forward to sitting down and talking to any of the nominees. And I advised Chief of Staff and the Governor-elect. I said, after doing this for 12 years, the one thing that's essential is to make sure that any of those that are nominated make sure they get to each and every office and sit down with the senator. Some senators won't take you up on that meeting, but at a minimum, make sure you offer that, because it means a lot when you actually get to the point where you're kicking somebody out of committee with a vote, or if you're, I didn't mean kicking them out, I mean taking a vote in committee, and then once you hit the floor, it's the first thing. If somebody says, I've never met this person, I don't know who they are, we typically always break them out from the bigger list, so that's something that's essential, and they both agreed. They said, we'll make sure that happens, so.
On the budget, do you think you guys will be able to move forward with what Governor-elect Evers gives you, or do you think the legislature may go in a different direction?
We talked about it. I mean, I think what Speaker Voss and I have been talking about is probably a process where you work off of the base budget and have the Joint Finance Committee kind of build from there. Now, that doesn't mean that there couldn't be some common areas where, again, I talked to the governor-elect this morning about this, where there would be some common interest, where maybe we could get some veto assurances that he would just, keep his pen off of that area and build some consensus. So I'm hopeful that we can get there in some regard, but I was around when Governor Doyle was there, and I remember at that point Mark Murata was sitting in on the Finance Committee going back and forth, and there was very little discussion about some of those veto assurances. So I think in that first oil budget, that didn't really apply, and I think some people were really surprised by that. If I remember correctly, even Governor Doyle was surprised by that we didn't come up with any consensus. But I think in that second budget, there was a little bit more of an effort in that direction. So I think it can be done. I think those types of negotiations can happen with the Finance Committee as we go along with the governor's office. I remember when Tommy Thompson was governor, it happened all the time, where you would constantly be in the governor's office trying to cut a deal on something before the Finance Committee took that final vote. So I'm hopeful that process will emerge and kind of lend itself to cooperation along the way.
So is the legislature going to work off a base budget or off the Governor Evers budget? How do you envision that?
I can't imagine we would take I guess I don't want to fully just assume that before the governor-elect introduces his budget that we'll just completely dismiss it, but I'm still assuming we'll work off of a base budget. Yeah.
Where are the biggest gaps right now between where he wants money to go and where you might not want as much?
I don't know. I mean, we didn't get into that this morning. I'm assuming that, there'll be, it'll be the big ones. It's going to be certainly on transportation, certainly on K-12, certainly on Medicaid. I think that's kind of the areas where you would think maybe you can kind of go back and forth and work something out. So.
Is there any circumstance under which the Senate would be open to expanding Medicaid?
I don't see it right now, but there's a lot of moving parts, as we know. So I don't want to be presumptuous and say that it's been completely ruled out.
So what are some of the parts that could move in such a way that would be something the Senate would be open to?
I think it's going to be more of a dialogue, because you've had this dialogue between the executive branch and DC that's been going on now for 8 years, and the back and forth on waivers, and obviously we addressed that in the lame duck, but it's just hard to anticipate kind of where I think the numbers are going to be right now. I mean, I literally think you probably will revisit that in mid-February to see exactly where they're at. Now, he may not have the numbers he needs in Medicaid to be able to do some type of forecast, or that literally they may have to come back to the legislature for more information on that. So, again,
but I'm not hearing you shut the door on that.
I think it's a little too early. Get back to me probably in mid-February, and we'll probably have a better handle on it.
The audit bureau yesterday said that there are some procedures that WEDC has that would allow them to pay tax credits for Foxconn workers that aren't in Wisconsin. Does that concern you? Do you think they need to make changes like the bureau's recommending?
I talked to Mark Hogan yesterday about this, and I kind of asked him specifically, like, are we talking like hundreds of people, or are we talking like onesie, twosie somewhere in the country? And his description was, it's a very small number, and it would be very isolated and specific to some type of unique situation where you would have a worker out of state paying Wisconsin income tax, okay? So it kind of brings them into the fold in that regard. And then what they're doing or how they're doing it, I guess it would, I wouldn't say it'd be a case-by-case situation, but it didn't seem like it was as significant as I guess even what the audit had kind of talked about. So.
When you say small number, can you
like one guy located in South Dakota who's paying Wisconsin income tax because he's got some type of unique position.
Does the legislature
Yeah.
need to check on that to make sure, though, that there aren't any abuses? That's what the lab recommends.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, WEDC, in the history of the state, I don't think there's been any agency that's been as audited and as scrutinized as WEDC, and whether I like it or not, it's gonna continue, and specific to even what happens with the agency, and then obviously it's all being driven by Foxconn, and you know, so it's gonna be bird dogged all the way through the entire process, so.
Scott, as you move into the budget process next year, do you see the greater conflict being between Republicans and Governor Evers, or between the Senate and the Assembly Republicans?
The speaker and I have been getting along great, and I would anticipate that it is gonna be a different environment for us. It's gonna be a different process for us. I think that they probably will be a little bit more give and take, partly because, you know, what drove that sometimes is obviously the way the Assembly was able to accelerate through a lot of these policy discussions and come up with a final product. Where, I mean, you guys know, probably to the frustration of some of you, I'm telling people I literally don't have the votes right up until I do have the votes. And it's the truth, because it's just a different process over here. I think Speaker Voss gets that, and because you don't have like that third element of Governor Walker sitting there kind of either driving the policy, setting the table for the policy discussions, that we're going to absolutely have to work closer together instead of kind of butting heads, which we've seen in some past budgets and in some other individual piece of legislation. So, and the speaker and I have talked about that. I mean, we just need to anticipate that. We need to prepare our members to be able to work closer together with the other house. So,
Governor-elect talked during the campaign about cutting income taxes by 10% for folks low and middle income.
Yeah.
Is that something you're open to?
sure, we're open to it. I didn't, be honest with you, I didn't talk to the governor-elect about it this morning. That didn't come up, but yeah, I think we're always open to having that discussion. The state's in a great position. I think because of the policy decisions we've made, and certainly with the economy expanding the way it is in Wisconsin, I think, yeah, that should always be something that's on the table.
On that front, though, Senator, during the listening sessions of the last week, the governor-elect had said he's hopeful that he won't have to propose a budget that raises taxes. Hopeful. How do you feel about that descriptor?
Yeah, I can't imagine a situation where, in general, sales tax, corporate tax, income tax, that there would be any increase there that would be needed with the position that the state's in right now. I think we're in great shape, and I can't imagine what scenario would develop where he would need to do that as we sit here today. So,
Guys, we got time for two more.
Senator, as someone who's worked with both the Democratic governor and Jim Doyle and the Republican Scott Walker, what makes the difference in that working relationship with the next governor? Is it the person or is it the party? How do you manage those two things?
yeah, the big difference is we won't be sitting in, obviously, Governor-elect Evers' office developing kind of a strategy for the party, where that was always something that was at the forefront. Messaging, what do we want this to kind of, how do we want to execute this? What's the timing of it? What's the timeline on this? If you fully develop something. I mean, those are things that I think people, kind of are able to work through when you're coming from the same party. That's not going to happen. So a lot of these things will be kind of launched and discussed publicly, and they'll kind of fall where they may. But that's obviously the big difference. So.
To follow up, when you first started, you said you've known Tony Evers for years. What difference does it make, if at all, the relationship you have with the person as opposed to the party?
Yeah, I mean, we need to build rapport. I mean, I've known him for years, but most of it was kind of limited to, kind of 20-minute discussions about something very specific. A lot of back and forth on school choice with Evers over the years, and specific to his staff saying this is something that'll work. We feel legitimately, DPI has concerns about this because we don't think it can be applied kind of on the street. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about school choice over the years related to some of those very tight, specific decisions that were made related to legislation and the way it was drafted. So that was a lot of the discussion that I think happened with DPI over the years from a Republican's perspective, I think. So, yeah, I mean, I think that at some point if we hit some of these areas that we think there's some common interest, that'll be the opportunity to kind of pull people in the room and say, okay, let's see if we can come up with some common goals here.
More medical marijuana, that's something the incoming governor is open to. Is that something the Senate would take a look at?
No, I don't see it. I don't see the support. I don't support it. So I'm not sure. I hope the governor doesn't come up with some type of fictitious number, throw it out there, and then, expect us to kind of with a straight face consider that a balanced budget. I mean, there's concerns about some other areas like that where if you just throw something out there to develop kind of some cover, that I just don't see it happening at all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.